Welcome to Independently Speaking, the new podcast of the Independent Schools Association. Celebrating our diversity, we take pride in representing a broad spectrum of educational settings, including nursery, preparatory, senior, sixth form, and boarding schools. This vibrant network includes institutions specializing in the arts, sports, and faith-based education, along with those offering exceptional assistance for students with special educational needs or disabilities. Thank you for joining us for this episode of Independently Speaking. Now here is your host, ISA Director of Education and Inclusion, Helen Stanton-Tonner.
Welcome to the ISA podcast, Independently Speaking. I'm your host, Helen Stanton-Tonner, the Director of Education and Inclusion for ISA. And today we're bringing you something special, a spotlight episode. These episodes shine a light on our incredible ISA member schools, celebrating their innovation, creativity, and dedication to the children in their care. And in this episode, we're taking you on a journey through Liberty Woodland School, an independent school that's redefining education for the 21st century. From groundbreaking teaching methods to forward-thinking learning environments, Liberty Woodland School is pushing the boundaries of what education can be. So let's step inside and explore the magic happening in this remarkable school. Let's go in.
I'm here on the picturesque 3.5-acre campus of Liberty Woodland School, nestled on the fringes of a National Trust park in Morden, South London. I'm thrilled to be able to share this innovative independent school with you, and joining me is the head, Liana Barrett. Liana, thank you for having us.
Such a pleasure to welcome you to our school.
Now, as we walk through these beautiful grounds, I can't help but notice the unique learning spaces. Can you tell us a bit more about them?
Sure, well, I think it's really important to us to see the environment as the third teacher. And what's really important at this school is, with our core focus on well-being, is to ensure that the environment that the children are learning in focuses on developing their sense of positive well-being. So we spend an enormous amount of time learning outdoors, and that's not because it's an endurance test. That's not because we want to try and make life more challenging. It's because often learning outdoors is the best environment for children to learn in. It really develops their sense of well-being. It allows them to be calm. It allows them to feel grounded, and that then allows them to focus better on their learning.
Brilliant. And what we have here, what would you call this structure?
So we have, throughout our 3.5-acre site, we have what we call class dens. And these class dens, they're not classrooms, but they're our equivalent of a classroom. So they're 7 to 9 metre diameter wane edge fences with canopies on top. So what that gives us is a warm, dry environment, so that when the children are doing, if you're writing an extended essay in year 6 in February, you're not going to do that outside under a tree. You're going to do that inside one of the class dens, and you're going to do that potentially under the heaters. And the purpose of these class dens are to stamp your identity as a community. This is where your class stamps their identity. This is where they create their community of who they are together with their class teacher, and this is also where learning's made visible. So this is where our project working walls will be. We'll be able to see the steps to success children are working towards in their project. It's where they're working maths, their literacy, their well-being. It's where all of their learning will be made visible, as well as having a book nook, a reading den, and having various different aspects of continuous provision.
Lovely. Should we have a look inside? So which year group is this one?
This is year 2, and this year our year 1 teacher came through with year 2. So what that meant was that he started the year knowing the children inside out, which is a really lovely way to start the year. And so he's designed, we've got a 3 metre high canopy here over the wane edge fencing, and he's designed this to feel, the children were quite interested in the circus, so he's designed it to feel like a circus tent. So we've got the draped fabrics, and then around the draped fabrics and the hanging fabrics, he wanted to explore with the children their hopes and dreams for the year. So these clouds that are all hanging from the ceiling, it's because we're representing the sky, and then children wrote their hopes and dreams and made models of things that represent their hopes and dreams and hung them from the ceiling. And then they've made the fencing have got sort of Hessian green boards, and then that's again trying to replicate the natural environment and the natural colours.
And you've obviously brought the outside in here because you've got logs for seats and, you know, like it's wood chip on the floor, but you've also got different zones for your children to actually experience different aspects of the school day.
Yes, I think it's interesting. Some people think that as a school, it's an outdoor school, that children spend all day skipping along a meadow and baking bread on a fire, but we're still a school, we're still an environment of learning, and so we have to be set up for that. And so we have screens, we have whiteboards, we have an enormous amount of books, and so we have to create an environment that is as learning friendly as possible. So we have the log circle, which is where in the corner of the den here, the log circle's one of the most important parts of the school. It's where children come in the morning, and it's where the foundation for their day begins. So every morning the whole school comes in at 8:30, and one of the most gorgeous moments of the day is between 8:30 and 9, the whole school free plays together. And that's where I feel so lucky, and I never know how much longer this is going to carry on for. But we've got year 9 students who were crawling around on the floor being horses this morning for year 1 children riding on their backs. So it's such a lovely start to the day that they're still playing. Then everyone comes into their class dens and they go into their morning, we call it a morning meeting. So for half an hour before any of our formal learning begins in the day, they sit around on their log circles with their teachers, and the children talk about, how are we feeling today? Has anything happened that we need to talk about at home? Does anyone feel it? Does anyone need to share any information with us to allow us to know how best to support each other for a really positive day ahead? We reflect on, what did we achieve yesterday? What did we intend to achieve yesterday? What did we achieve? Let's reflect on that. Then let's talk about, what are we going to commit to together today to have a constructive day ahead? We might set intentions. We might do personal affirmations. We will create our schedule for the day, and what it will mean is that regardless of how the children came into school, when they finish that morning meeting, potentially adding on a bit of meditation or mindful breathing, they will be in the green zone, they will be ready to learn. And so I think it's really important taking that time to sit together as a community, sit together as a class. There is no point trying to rush through learning if you haven't taken the time to make sure that the children are in the green zone. So we spend 30 minutes a day doing that, and that's our lovely log circle.
And your outdoor spaces sort of like are just as important, aren't they? Because obviously the students all have a dedicated space for their year group, but you also have spaces which the whole school can take advantage of or use, not just sort of in a way of studying, but also for relaxation.
Yes, I mean, it's quite lovely here. You'll quite often see children sitting in a tree reading, or it's just a beautiful environment where children feel like they know they've got such a sense of belonging here. They know their space, they love their space, they're familiar with their space, and they use it for play, they use it for reading, they use it for relaxation, and they know this site inside out. And I had a beautiful moment a few weeks ago when I came in, and it must have been February, I think it was, and a year 3 child was really excitedly pulling me. She wanted me to go across to a back end of the site where I might not be walking on a daily basis. I said, come and see, come and see, come and see. And she wanted to show me that, it must have been snowdrops, I think it was, or crocuses. There was something coming up at the base of a tree right at the back of the site, and the sunlight was coming through the canopy and shining on these flowers. And I had this real moment of, I'm so pleased and proud of these children that they're so attuned that they're noticing these things. They're noticing these things, and they're valuing these things, and they wanted to share these things.
That's lovely. Can we move over to the greenhouse?
Yes. If we have children, if they come here a bit older, they'll quite often just want reassurance for a while that they can stay. Rather unhelpfully, they're quite often, for the first few weeks, older children go home and say, we didn't do any school, we're just playing all the time. And we're like, don't worry, parents, they are. Let us tell you what they thought was playing. That was maths today. Let us tell you what that was.
Yeah. And that's important, isn't it? That they feel like they are enjoying their learning.
We have some children here, parents tell us that in December, they get used to having an advent calendar for counting down to Christmas. Yes. And then after Christmas, they make one and start counting down to coming back to school.
Now, as we walk sort of down here, I can see that that your environment is made of natural products. You've got wood, you've got various things made of things you will find naturally in the environment. Was that purposeful?
It was. So when we took over this site, it was quite derelict, and so we looked at where the footfall might naturally go when we put boardwalks along there, when we put in the fencing, we tried to make everything look, we had to make the school safe and we had to make the school accessible, but we wanted to make it look as natural as possible, down to every single decision we make here. We're not over reflective, but we are a very, very reflective team here, because every decision we make, we want it to be made because it's to the benefit of the children. So down to choosing this fencing. In choosing this fencing that borders the river, it's bordering the river, so it has to be made safe. But what we also want is for children to be able to see through that and to be able to see the river, and to not have it to feel, we want it to be safe, but we want it to be accessible to the children. So even choosing the style of fencing that we put in and trying to make it look rustic and accessible for the children, every single decision about every single piece of material we use is really important to create this beautiful environment for the children.
Yeah. And as we're coming up here, we're coming across, there's a greenhouse and another sort of structural building. So you're obviously growing things as well.
Yes, so we've got a propagation house. This is our propagation house, and the children have always had a dream of being able to eat at lunch, because we make lunches here at school, to be able to eat a lot of what they're growing themselves. So they've started the propagation house. We've this year employed a full-time gardener, and she's helping us work with this, because realistically the children don't have time to do all the gardening themselves, but what they are doing is, under her guidance, maintaining our garden area. They take care of, these are our compost bins. So we compost all of our food waste, and we've got compost worms in here. The children take care of feeding the worms, they call it. Then we've got the propagation house. These are all the garden beds where we're growing various items. Some more compost bins here. And then this is our greenhouse and plant room. So as a school, when we took over this site, we wanted to make it as sustainable as possible and really sort of put our money where our mouth is and make sure that we're running this site the best way we can. And so as a first decision when we moved in, we decided to install a ground source heat pump. So this building, this area we're in now, had to be heavily, heavily excavated. We had to go really far down, and then we had to put in channels of piping going back and forth under the ground. That then runs to a turbine in the river. So the turbine in the river turns the turbine, it comes through here, and the hot water runs through underground under the plant room, and that's then where all of our hot water comes from for the school. And on top of the ground source heat pump piping, we built in a greenhouse, and the greenhouse is used for growing vegetables and growing plants, but it's also a really, really lovely learning space. And again, it's a carefully designing, so the colors that we use, always trying to really invoke a sense of calm, a sense of well-being, so that wherever your space is, you feel like you're really grounded and connected to the world.
And well-being is quite important here at Liberty Woodland, is it? Because I can see sort of amongst these raised beds, we've got seating areas, even outside, the way that the growing spaces and raised beds are organised. There's a lot of space. There's a lot of places where the students can be. So what sort of impact has this environment had on your students' well-being?
Well, I think, it's not just the environment, it's also the relationships. I think it's a small thing, but decisions like the fact that every child here calls every adult, including me, by our first name. We all know who the adults are. We all know what the hierarchy is. Why do we need to put another barrier between us? And so it's all the little decisions like that, and the really intentional time we spend on developing the relationships between the adults and the children, and then in creating the right environment and using the environment the right way, is we have children here who are really, really happy. And I think they're happy because they are connected to the natural world. They feel a sense of belonging. They are secure in their relationships. They feel safe, and they're full of joy as a result. And actually, the only formal testing we do in this school is that we do the Chem Wellbeing test twice a year. So the only formal testing is done in primary school is to test children's well-being and monitor their sense of well-being.
And has your move to a 4-day week supported well-being, or is that more of a practical decision?
Well, we actually opened running a 4-day week because before we opened the school, I felt as though, this was 6 years ago now, I felt as though that's the way the world was moving towards, and that's what we should be moving towards, is having a better work-life balance. It also allows children to have longer days here so that they can get more into the flow. It's not a rush of 45-minute lesson, then a bell's going. Actually, if you're going to do a deep project session, take an hour and a half on your project session. If there's something else you need to discuss, take the time. So they have 4 longer days, and what that then means is on the Friday, and I do not know, hats off to other schools who don't do this, on a Friday the teaching team are in without the children, and we can do CPD together, we can have staff meetings together, we can co-plan, and it makes the teaching and it makes the working in a school so much more manageable. So it's a benefit to the children. The families love having a 3-day weekend. It makes it easier for you to travel, and it's so good for the children to have a sense of, as much as they love the school, that they have a break and that they have a really good work-life balance, school life balance, and they have time, they have a good 3 days a week to focus on what they're interested in and their personal passions and their personal interests.
Brilliant. Can we go to the senior school?
Yes.
Now, as we're walking through the grounds here, we've come across an area with very large tables and benches. What's this space used for?
So this is where we eat our lunch. So when we designed the school, I wanted to have a place for children to eat. I wanted them to eat outdoors, but I wanted the tables to feel oversized. I wanted to feel a little bit like the Great Hall in Harry Potter, where you feel kind of dwarfed a little bit by your furniture, and that gives you a sense of just a way of feeling. And so we designed these lovely tables. We managed to find in the center of our site is one of the oldest cedar trees in the country, and we managed to find a sawmill that had planks of cedar, and we joined huge planks of cedar together, and we used those to make the lunch tables that the children work at. And this, again, like everything else in the site, these cedar tables, these were built by our carpenters on site, but then the team sanded them and the team painted them and varnished them. Everything here is done with community and with intent.
Now, as we move away from where sort of the prep and the pre-prep are playing, we're sort of heading towards one of your newer buildings, aren't we?
Yes, we acquired this building in March last year. It was an absolute disaster and in worse shape than we'd expected. We had 6 months in which we had to turn it around. We ended up having to completely gut it, but the intention for this was to be a secondary learning space. So our secondary students, when I talked to them about what they were excited for and what they were looking forward to about their secondary building, they were really excited to have a space that was dedicated to secondary, but they were concerned because they said that when they're learning outdoors, they feel really calm, they feel really grounded, and that allows them to focus on their learning much more. And what I wanted to do then when we designed the secondary space is work really hard to bring the outdoors in and to be really careful and intentional with our choice of fabrics, our choice of materials, our choice of colours, to design this space to still evoke the sense of feeling that you get when you're outdoors, whilst also making it quite high end, because I wanted them to feel a sense of professionalism. I wanted them to feel that when they're in secondary school, actually it's a different time of life now, and we designed this to feel a bit more like a WeWork space rather than a school.
And again, sort of as we've entered the building, I mean, you've used natural products, there's a real feel of calm, and your colour scheme, again, is matching the outside environment. Is that all, again, deliberate?
Yes, we spent a long time working on colours and on materials, because what I wanted them to feel was that when they come in here, I want them to feel special. I want them to feel special, and I want, even though they're spending more time indoors, I want them to, because they're in secondary, we're doing the International Baccalaureate, I'm afraid you do need to sit down a bit more at tables at this age. I think when we designed this space, I think your environment plays such a role in how you feel. And so with designing indoor spaces and designing an indoor building, you still want to evoke the same feelings, because how you feel really impacts upon your well-being, and how you feel really impacts upon your ability to learn. And so every single decision we make here is for the benefit of the children. If it's not going to benefit a child, let's not do it. So if we're going to put artwork on the wall, let's make it of sustainable materials. And I was just bringing your attention to the mushroom panels we have here. So our art on the wall is reclaimed bits of wood that we have grown mycelium on to turn into works of art. And again, it brings in the acoustics of those softer, natural materials, as well as looking really beautiful. Things like the art on the wall. The art on the walls is not art that we've bought. It's art that the children have created, and they've created it in order to represent. And they haven't just created art either. That's the beauty of this place, to reflect the disciplines and characteristics of a learner at the school. So everything that we do here is really intentional and done with purpose.
So Sustainability is a real significant focus for you. Everything you've talked about is, everything has a real purpose. Can you share some of the initiatives which you've been working on or are thinking of working on going forward?
Sure. Well, I think a big thing is we actively teach environmentalism to the students. So from reception right the way throughout the school, all of the students have focus time every week with our science teacher, Chloe, who also teaches environmentalism. And part of that is, depending on their age, part of that might be learning how to be custodians of the site, stewardship of the site, looking after gardening, looking after our natural environment. And then as they progress older, it'll be about exploring climate mitigation and climate change and making sure that these children are being developed enough that when they grow up, they will be the custodians who are looking after the future of the planet, and they are putting forward solutions. We try really hard to develop the children here to be solution focused rather than people who look at a problem. And we teach environmentalism to them every week. We have a spring term every year in which the whole focus of primary, the project, is working towards a eco festival. We call it Save Our Futures. It was named by the children a few years ago. And we run this festival every year on Earth Day. And at this Earth Day, we have between 500 to 700 visitors who come in from around London, and each of the primary classes works towards a goal of becoming an environmental influencer and having an impact on the public. And so they will all be presenting this April, as every April, they will all be presenting different suggestions of ways that members of the public or general people can make a difference to the climate, make a difference to the world, and they will ask every parent before, or every adult before they leave the festival, to make one pledge. Because I think we don't necessarily need the grand gestures. What we need is lots of people making small changes, and will all add up to positive results.
Now, Liana, you have a few buildings on site. Now, obviously, there's the main building where you have your offices and things, and obviously the secondary school building, which has been beautifully developed. What is this older building in front of us?
So this is the old, and it's listed, which is why it looks like this. It's the old stable block, and it's an absolutely beautiful building. It still has the stalls in it from where the horses would use the building. And what we really wanted to do when we took this space over is this was going to be our art studio. So we wanted to make it usable, but we also really wanted to retain the character, because I think it's so inspiring for creativity. And so we use the downstairs as a pottery studio, and we've got the kilns and sort of free-form access for sculpture materials. And then upstairs we have an art studio in there, as well as in the roof we have a bat hotel.
And in terms of the curriculum itself, you follow the IB. Can you tell us how you do that with obviously maintaining the importance of sustainability in your curriculum?
Well, our primary school, we wrote our own curriculum for the primary school, and it's skills and attributes based. We call it the key areas of competence. And we work along skills ladders to track the children's progress in this. And in primary, a lot of our work is done through project-based learning. And what we work towards, not just in project, but in all subjects, is that learning is meaningful, relevant to children's lives, and purposeful. So they're not doing work to go in a book and be put in a filing cabinet. They're doing work that matters, and they are working for a purpose, and they're feeling empowered. And actually, as an example I can show you of this, is we had a project at last autumn term. We said to the students, to the teachers, we want you to work on a community project. This is a project that's going to be PSED and working on community. And what happens when we say what we're doing for a project is children, usually in lots of little groups, will come up with, this is our proposal for how we could do this project. This is what we could specifically work on. This is what we could strive towards as an outcome. This is which experts we could bring in, and there's usually various different ideas for the project. Then the class vote, whoever wins, that's what they go with. We had a different situation last year where we were doing a community PSED project, and the class teacher asked the children, what is it that you want to do? And every single child in the class wrote down on a piece of paper, build a pizza oven. And that is not normally what happens. So we're like, oh, this is interesting, because what we've got here is an entire class of children who are really, really driven, and they want to achieve something. So it was about, how can we make this project about PSED? How can we make it about community? Because we've got to take this enthusiasm we have. And with the children, they were only 6, they were 6 and 7. We decided that the whole project would be working towards, that outcome would be that even though they're only 6 and 7, they were going to do a PowerPoint presentation to me, pitching whether or not they could have a pizza oven. And I deliberately didn't go into the class for the entire term, and I let them work on it. And I know there were some really tricky times for them. And they, we worked a lot on Guy Claxton's learning pits and things. How do you, when learning's really tough, how do you get yourself out again? But I went to the final presentation armed with a list of questions, because they might be 6 or 7, but they're not getting a pizza oven unless they've answered all my questions. And I went to the presentation and they answered every single one of my questions in their presentation. And I had nothing left to ask them. The only thing I had left to ask them was that the project is now over. So you now need to move on to another project. So how is the pizza oven going to get built? And they said, oh, we've got an idea for that. We found a company that has bricks, and if you pay them, they'll write your name on a brick. And we think that our parents would pay like £30 a brick if they could write their child's name on it. So they asked if they could pitch to the PTA, and if the PTA could fundraise for the pizza oven. They did pitch to the PTA. The PTA said yes. They fundraised using the children's ideas, and then they bought and installed the pizza oven that the children had chosen, researched, in the location that the children had deemed safe and secure, and they did it using their materials. And what that means to me is that every time these children walk around that side, every time they walk past this pizza oven, they think, I can achieve. What I do matters. I can have impact on the world. And it's really important. It's making learning purposeful and relevant. Means there's so much you can do to challenge them.
Absolutely. And here with the pizza oven, you can see the bricks at the back with all of their names on in white. So their names are very clear. And it is a full-size pizza oven. It's not like a small one, with wonderful mosaics over the top that go around the dome. And how often do they get pizzas?
Well, we have pizza once a week. Sometimes it's cooked in the oven, but we fire up the pizza oven for all of our events. And occasionally we've got some really good pizza chefs in our parent community who come in and cook lunch for the children on it.
And Leanna, when you're developing something as innovative as the school that you've made here, are there particular challenges that you've had to overcome, which maybe you thought might be too big at the time, but you can see now that they were a journey?
I don't think there's anything that hasn't been a challenge, to be honest. It's really, really tough. It's really, really hard work. Being a pioneer and doing things different to everybody else does attract criticism. It does attract people who don't believe. But what we've got here is a really, really strong team. I'm not doing this by myself. I've got a really strong team of experienced teachers, experienced leaders who all passionately believe in this, and we're all working together. We've got a community of children who are thriving. We've got parents who are really happy. And I think if anybody can't quite grasp how school can be anything other than their own lived experience, they just need to come in and spend a few minutes with these children, look at the work, the quality of the work the children are producing, and look at the characters and the human beings they're becoming. And I think that reassures you. But I don't think there's anything from our planning permission to our inspections, to our relocating trees. I mean, there's nothing that isn't a challenge. I think that's similar to all schools, but it's especially so here.
And if you could give our listeners sort of one real key takeaway about what the future of education should look like, what would you say?
That's a really good question. I think seeing children as individuals and allowing them to become the best version of themselves by treating them like human beings and with kindness. I think the focus on well-being, I think that's a really big thing that lots of schools are missing, and well-being isn't having a growth mindset poster on the wall. It's not saying that we do it, it's actually genuinely taking the time to focus on well-being, and then what you can get out of the children is astonishing when you focus on that first.
And as we conclude our tour, what would you hope our listeners will be taking away about Liberty Woodland School?
I hope they realise there's another way. And I hope they realise that it's really important to look forward when you're designing education and when you're thinking about your school. Don't replicate what's been done in the past, but look into the research, look into neuroscience, look into the child development, look into the world with all its complexities and challenges that these children are growing up into, and think about how you can design things to prepare them for the future.
Thank you so much, Liana. It's been a really inspiring journey walking around with you and seeing Liberty Woodland School and where you came from and what you're doing. It's been a real inspirational visit. Thank you so much for having us here.
Thank you for coming to visit. It was a pleasure.
Now, this wraps up today's episode of Independently Speaking. It's been wonderful to visit such an innovative setting, really taking advantage of its status as an independent school. If you'd like to learn more about Liberty Woodland School, do get in touch with them or visit their website at libertywoodlandschool.com. If you found this episode interesting, do go back over the series. Make sure you subscribe to future episodes where we'll be continuing to explore crucial topics and more pioneering approaches to education. Stay curious, stay connected, and we'll be back soon with more insights and inspiration. Until next time.
You've been listening to Independently Speaking, the podcast of the Independent Schools Association. For more information about ISA and the schools we support, please visit isaschools.org.uk.